Awesome, thanks. As Joe mentioned, my name is Jennifer Duss, and I'm actually a full stack developer here at Aten. My background is specifically with higher education and working with non-for-profit organizations such as Girls Who Code. I've had the privilege to work as a web developer and teach computer science at the collegiate level for several years. Back in 2019, I actually lost a portion of my vision due to a condition known as optic neuritis. This is actually one of the main reasons why I constantly strive to make the web and the world around me a more accessible place. With my position at Aten, I've been able to make that a reality by bringing accessibility to life on the web. Now I'm going to hand it over to Michaela, Aten's Accessibility and QA Specialist.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Michaela Blackham, and I'm the Accessibility and QA Specialist here at Aten Design Group. With a little bit of background, I entered into the workforce as an interactive designer. Then I became more of a combo designer and developer before I moved into the development world full-time. I've been really advocating and pushing for this passion on digital accessibility for about 5 to 6 years now. And as of 2020, I moved into a full accessibility specialist role here at Aten to really make a difference in our process, build a partnership with the Blind Institute of Technology, and educate others on the importance of creating accessible products and services. Today, we'll be using an actual case study we worked on here at Aten to go over the ins and outs of creating accessible mega menus. But before we really dive into this case study, let's take a look at why we're actually here today. One of the more common issues and questions regarding someone's site that we tend to see a lot tends to be their main menu. Whether this is a regular straightforward menu, a simple dropdown, or a complex mega menu, we should make sure this component works flawlessly for absolutely everyone interacting with your site. Because, well, this is the most important part of your site. If you have an entire population unable to easily interact or unable to interact with your menu at all, then a major portion of your site will never be reached by them. So what will we learn today? We'll be showing you a step-by-step process and how we reviewed a mega menu and at what we looked for during that process. We will go over some of the issues that we found, and we'll go into some detail on how we resolve these issues. And ideally, we hope that sharing this case study and our step-by-step with you will empower confidence into your team to be able to review your own menu's level of accessibility and interaction. But of course, at the end of this, if you still feel like you need Aten's help or direction, we're always here as a resource. So let's hop into the whole program. For today's case study, we'll be looking at one of Aten's clients, Indivisible. They came to Aten a few years ago to perform some upkeep and add some new features to their site, which was built years prior coming to Aten. We were adding another feature and performing an accessibility review on that feature when we noticed some major issues with their menu, and we wanted to dive in a little further. And that's where we'll begin this discussion on how we found these issues and what we were looking for. So first things first, it's time to review the site, or in this case, the menu for accessibility related issues. The first test you should be performing is with automated testing. Now, when I talk about automated testing, I talk about tools that comb through the code to find nitty-gritty issues. A lot of these issues are things that would be difficult to find manually in the code or even looking at the front end of your site. These are issues like insufficient contrast, incorrect heading structure, vague links, and missing form labels, and so on. These are things you would only really find if you do look at the code itself. And these issues tend to be semantic markup, which in turn enhance screen reader navigation when you fix them. Keep in mind that some results from your automated testing can always give false errors. Common false errors that I see tend to be related to contrast, and it's always good to manually review those issues. And as always, I want to remind you that automated testing is not a catch-all, and manual testing is always necessary because human logic must always be applied. But it's definitely the first step in the review process. But before we look at Indivisible's automated issues, let's talk about the one I would recommend for absolute beginners, especially for those that are not ready to install anything or dive too deep into the code. Keep in mind that there are a number of wonderful automated tools you can integrate into your everyday CLI, like Pally, Koali, Axe, and so on. Tools like Site Improve can also help you scan your site continuously throughout the length of your project. But for today's session, I wanted to focus on the Wave tool. This is because it's something everyone can very easily use. It's something everyone can easily understand. It puts the answers into human readable format for you. And more importantly, it's absolutely free to anyone and everyone, which is very important. So let's take a look at the wave review and the outcome for the indivisible site. As you can see here, we found a number of issues on the site using the wave tool. But for today's talk, we will just be focusing on the issues that we find in the header and the menu. Here, I can see we have an error on the logo and then some other errors in the social media area. But this is where some manual review will come in, because we don't want to forget to review dropdowns or the mobile menus or anything else as well that may change with an interaction or upon screen size. So for instance, if I go over to the left-hand column here, you can see under all of the errors that are listed, you can see that there's these 4 times missing alternative text at the top. And those seem to be a little more grayed out than the rest of them. And these are grayed out because they are found somewhere that is not currently shown to the user, usually within a display none in the code. Turns out, if we open up the mega menu, you can see that these mega menus actually include large images like this one here, the image by Melissa Bender. In this case, we already know that the missing alternative text attribute was due to the images found in the mega menu. And there were no other issues present in the dropdown, so we can move on from automated testing. So after running our automated test, we now know that we need to fix the social media image links, that they're missing alternative text. Because these don't have text or any kind of image at all, it's actually a background image originally, they're being read to the screen reader as nothing at all. Next, we want to look at the images found in the mega menu. Now, these don't have an alternative text attribute at all, which is a huge burden for screen reader users. Not including alternative text attributes will just read the path to the image. So something like that would be /sites/default/files, and so on till the end of the path. It's very frustrating. And finally, the empty link in the logo, meaning the logo was a link, but it had no alternative text. It had the attribute, but no text, and didn't have any visually hidden text in it. Therefore, it's kind of not read as anything to the screen reader user. So they don't really know where that link is going to. So now that we did the automated testing, now we look at navigating your site using your keyboard. If there was only one test you would need to do as an everyday user, this is it. Automated testing only catches a small handful of code issues. The keyboard navigation will really let you know how others actually interact with your site. This could be as simple as using the tab, shift, spacebar, arrows, enter, and escape keys. Navigating by keyboard will let you know if users who require assistive technology can focus on an element, can click to interact with the element, can reinforce if the outcome is what is expected when you actually interact with it, and things of that sort. Anyone can do the basics of this testing, and I encourage every one of you to try this out. And as a note, all assistive technology is based off of keyboard commands in the code. The general rule of thumb is if you can interact with it via your keyboard, you can at least interact with it via other assistive technologies. Now, again, this is just a general rule and not a catch-all. We will need to include some extra announcements, maybe fix up some semantic markup and so on here and there for a screen reader to properly know what's going on with these interactions. But getting your site to function properly via keyboard is a major improvement. When testing with a keyboard, you want to ask yourself these questions. Do you know where you are on the page? If you're not using a mouse and you don't have this little arrow to be able to tell you where you are, how do you know where you are on the page? You want to make sure you have your focus style. Can I skip the main navigation and jump right to the content? Is there that visually hidden skip link at the very top of the page, or does your user have to go through every single link in the header before even getting to the content on the page? Can I interact with all interactive elements? So this is a huge one. If you can interact with it with your mouse, you need to be able to interact with it with your keyboard. If you cannot, that's going to be a major issue. Does information appear on hover? You don't want to include a lot of extra information on hover because that can cause some issues between mobile and desktop, or maybe it's not going to appear on hover for keyboard users and so on. So you just want to keep that in mind. And is the order and the flow of the keyboard navigation logical and expected? Are you going top to bottom, left to right, or are you kind of jumping all over the place? Are you expecting it to go to this next main menu link, but now you're somewhere else on the page? You need to pay attention to how that is actually flowing. And are the interactions expected? Are you expecting that to be a drop down? Are you expecting to click this button and go to a new page, or for a pop-up to happen? You want to make sure that that's very intuitive and expected. Are you locked out of that functionality altogether? That has to do with number 3 as well. If you can interact with it with the mouse, you need to be able to interact with it via your keyboard. Otherwise, you're locking out a whole community out of that functionality. And finally, can I close any pop-ups or drop-downs with the escape key? This is great for people who may have like a modal window open, or maybe you have the mega menu open and you don't want to have to force a user to have to tab through all of the elements just to get to the next one. By using the escape key, they can easily get to the next spot that they want to without having to go through anything extra. So now let's take a look at the Indivisible site using our keyboard. So you can see here, I have my mouse kind of floating around, and you can see I'm hovering over these items and the mega menus are appearing. So that's kind of what we're expecting. You don't really expect these to be drop downs, but let's go on. Now we're going to use the keyboard. So you can see with this keyboard, we're going in the logical order. We know where we are because we have that focus style. However, I'm actually clicking on these items here and nothing's appearing. These aren't links to new pages, and they are not activating the drop-down menu. So you can see we had a couple issues going on with that screencast there. The main issues that we found was that the user cannot access the drop-down menus at all. No one can get to them in any way. And most of the menu items trigger hover events, but aren't actually links, which blocks out an entire population from interacting and navigating your site in general. There's no other way to get to those pages besides activating that dropdown, which you can't do with a keyboard. And there was no easy way to skip the content. You saw the first piece that was focused there was the logo. And before that logo should always be that skip to main content link. So the user could skip straight to the content or choose to go through everything on the header. And as you can see, these are 3 very important findings. There are some high priority items here that we need to address right away. So now that we went through the automated tools and our keyboard, we always just want to take another look and visually review the site or the navigation in this instance and see what we're working with. So looking at the site here, and based on our automated and keyboard test, we don't actually have to review for any contrast issues because we didn't have any. And looking at this, there's nothing that should have been caught that didn't get caught. So we are good there. Everything seemed to flow and moved as expected. We went top to bottom, left and right. So that was pretty nice. Alternative text, we would always want to review for accuracy. However, we don't have any alternative text to review quite yet. So we'll want to do that later on. But anytime you have alternative text, always review for accuracy. And the only issue that we really saw was that we didn't know the difference between which ones of these would be a dropdown and which ones were actual links. There's no notice to something like that here, not even when you hover or anything of that sort. So it was a little difficult to work with. And now that we did everything else, we want to make sure that we include real users to test everything. Only true everyday users who use assistive technology as an extension of themselves should be performing reviews. Experience is absolutely necessary. The way I use a screen reader would be completely different than someone who uses it every day. That is why at Aten, we partnered with the Blind Institute of Technology. BIT is a nonprofit organization based out of Denver with a mission of placing people with disabilities in the workforce and equalizing the playing field for everyone through technology. We are working together to bring awareness and education to everyone in the digital space. BIT is also helping us perform our user testing for ADA compliance and have been true experts in enhancing our accessibility practice here at Aten. Normally, we would send this over for review almost right away so that we know exactly where to take it. Maybe we can estimate how much time they have. But because this doesn't even work with keyboard the way it currently is, we already knew that it wasn't going to work for a screen reader. So we're not going to send it over to them to waste their time. So we made sure to get the entire thing working via keyboard before sending it over to BIT for proper review. So let's take a look at our first review from BIT. Kayla from BIT sent us back this video with how the screen reader works and walked us through the process so we can pinpoint exactly what we need to fix. I'm going to let her show you the findings in a bit more detail.
Let's take a look at the main navigation menu for the Indivisible website using the JAWS screen reader version 2021 with Google Chrome. So I have the Indivisible website pulled up here.
Indivisible.
And I'm just going to arrow down through the top of this website with the arrow key. And let's take a listen to what we have here.
Same page link, skip to main content.
Skip to main content.
Visited link Indivisible / link Facebook, link Twitter, link Instagram, heading level 2 search form.
So right at the top of the page, we have a skip to content link, which is good. We had that indivisible / element, which I assume takes you to the home page or is maybe the logo for Indivisible. And then we have some socials at the top of the page, linking out to the socials. And then we have our search field here. Now, typical website behavior as a screen reader user, I might expect the navigation menu to come first before a search field. So initially looking at this page, I was a little confused to find the links for social media and for the search above the main navigation menu in the DOM, but I can arrow down and keep exploring this page.
Search.
Slow this back
Slower.
down.
Link donate. Slower.
And then we get into our navigation menu. So let's take a listen here.
Join the movement. Shows up menu for join the movement button collapsed.
So that is in a collapsed state. So I know I can expand this if I need to. Let's keep going down the menu.
Take action. Shows up menu for take action button collapsed.
Okay. So we have several of these. I'm just going to quickly arrow through to get to the bottom of the menu.
Meet who we are. Shows up menu for who, link group leader resource, link store, link more ways to donate. Heading level 3, we beat Trump.
So we have this navigation menu with the accordion elements that we can expand. And then at the bottom of the menu, we have a few links. So let's expand one of these accordions up in the menu and see what happens.
Link more, take action. Shows up menu for take action button collapsed.
So we will expand the submenu for take action. I'm going to press enter.
Enter list with 6 items. Our campaigns link.
So it focuses us immediately to the Our Campaigns link, drops us in a list of links under this submenu. I'm going to down arrow and explore this list.
Link advocacy, link endorsements, link indivisible book, link find the local event, link register an event, list end. Heading level 3, we beat Trump.
So we get to a list end, and then immediately we jump to what looks like a heading that's the main content of this page. So my first thought as a screen reader user is, where did the rest of this menu go? I'm going to up arrow back up this list.
List, link endorsement, link our campaigns.
Get back up to the top here. So this is where it focused us when we opened the submenu. It dropped us on Our Campaigns. But what happens if I up arrow from here?
List of 6 items and create chain indivisibles organize, which means building power and flex.
It looks like there's some information about this submenu that is located above where we dropped focus. So if I didn't know to up arrow past this list and explore up the page, I would miss this information about the take action and what we're taking action on. Also, if I press up arrow again,
Image by Melissa Bender.
We have image by Melissa Bender. So I assume there's some picture here. The alt text provided for it isn't super descriptive, so I'm not really sure what this image is.
Link more ways to donate.
And
link store, link group leader shows up met who we are.
I have to up arrow further to get back to the menu. Alternatively, I can just hit escape.
Escape shows up.
We'll collapse this take action submenu and be taken back to the main navigation menu of the site. So that's a little bit of a demonstration on how this navigation menu works with the screen reader. Some of the confusion that may happen. So typically when focus is brought to a point on the page, you want that to be the very top of where we want to start reading. Because if you noticed, when I landed on the Our Campaigns link, I started navigating down from that point because I assumed focus was at the top of the section, so I should navigate down from there to see the rest of the important information. But obviously there was some stuff up above Our Campaigns that would have been useful to know. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what a screen reader user might experience, how they might navigate this page, and what some of their thought processes might be as they're going through this menu.
And that was a great example of her kind of showing us like how she would use it, as well as just kind of the issues that she came across. So some of the major issues that we need to resolve is that there was no real announcement that a dropdown or anything has changed. So once that actually, when she clicked on it and it opened, visually we could see that that changed, but there was no notice to the screen reader. So we have to take note of that. There was actually no announcement that a nav item even had a dropdown. So there wasn't really a notice that you could get in there. The logical and expected order was off. You were being brought to the middle of the menu and there was actually content before it. And then you got to the end of the list. And instead of going to the next main menu, you went to that heading on the page. The home logo wasn't really being read to the user as expected. And the user should not be automatically focused on a new link. That was the part where it got focused on the link and then there was still text and an image before that. So we definitely want to take a look at those issues there. So now that we know what's going on with the site and real users' feedback, we were able to tackle these issues. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer to talk a bit about how she was able to address these issues.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining all of that, Michaela. So let's take a look at how we were able to quickly resolve the automated issues first. One of the benefits of the Wave tool is that as a developer, we can use it locally to see these changes and verify that the flagged issues have been resolved in real time. Starting with the linked images that were missing alternative text, this was a pretty straightforward issue. We utilized the Drupal UI to simply say, require all these images to have alternative text be set. Now, this does have some limitations as it only checks when the page is updated or when an image is first added. So that means that you need to work with your content editors to make sure that text has been added to the images that were missing it. The second issue was images within the menu themselves were actually programmatically controlled, meaning that we were unable to set the alternative text via the Drupal UI. So after receiving an appropriate description of what the images were, we manually added alt tags within the code for those. The last issue we ran into was actually brought to our attention, the empty link, which is your logo and brand image. There were two edits we made for this. One was to set the title on the image since it was an SVG, and the other was to add an ARIA label for the link to let screen readers know what the image even is. After those simple changes, we were able to retest pretty quickly with the Wave application, and you can already see that there are no more alerts within the menu or header. This is a great step towards making this menu more accessible. However, we're not quite done yet. Let's take a look at how we improved the functionality for keyboard users. So we've already seen how the site's header and menu region is fairly unusable by a keyboard, especially regarding the main navigation. So how did we improve that functionality without altering the current visual design or layout? Well, our first step was to add the skip links that supports users getting direct access to your content. And we did this by adding a visually hidden link that has a reference to your main content. You can see that in that top div I've added here. And the way that this works is when a user selects that link, it navigates them further into the page wherever the main content anchor has been set, allowing them to skip right to the heart of your content. An interesting challenge with this particular site is that structurally they had what's known as a decoupled menu. And what I mean by that is that the top level links we saw on the page were not directly related within the page structure or hierarchy in any way. I've included an example of the menu structure as shown in the little red box up here, that the main navigation div closes and it has no sub elements within its structure. It's just a bunch of links. Beneath this, you actually see is a container that holds the submenu content. With this current structure and the fact that submenus are initially opened only by listening for a mouse hover, there's no way for a keyboard user to ever open or even reach these links. So what did we do to fix this? The approach we chose was to add hidden elements that would display if a menu item was selected and had a submenu. This would allow for keyboard support, but left the design visually unchanged. In a code snippet you see here at the top of the slide, We actually updated the links with a class that notes that they have a hidden menu, but can be focused. And this is actually what's going to allow keyboard users to interact with it. The image below is an example of a user who is tabbed to the Take Action link. And we can see that there's a little displayed caret icon we've added. The carets are invisible unless that specific item has been focused by a keyboard user and has a submenu. So adding those classes actually gave us a great starting point to link the decoupled parts of the menu in a way that keyboard users could reach them. For this site, JavaScript ended up being the solution that we utilized because we could create listeners to support attaching those separate menus. We also added specific IDs to the submenus just to make adding those decoupled parts a little bit easier. By using a listener, we watch for whenever a user has opened the menu link, and we attach the appropriate submenu that's expected to be displayed. When we set the focus to the newly opened menu, since it technically isn't part of the page structurally, this allows the keyboard user to interact with the entire submenu as they choose. It's important to note that we do keep track of which menu item was opened by assigning it the ARIA expanded and a specific open class. Now that the keyboard users can actually access the submenus, we need to validate that getting out of the menu was as easy as getting into it. This is actually handled in a few different ways. We built a JavaScript listener that specifically watches for if the escape button was pressed to close any open menus, or if the user was at the top of a submenu and chose to shift tab their way back to the main nav. Because this menu has a decoupled structure, both of these situations had to be accounted for to make sure that the user would end up where they expected to be. The handler to support these functions is surprisingly simple. If either of those key combinations occurred while within the menu, we simply set the focus back to that last open navigation item, making sure to close any open menus and mark that menu item as closed. We also needed to plan for if a user wanted to tab through the main navigation. We simply set it up so that you could continue to tab, and when you had reached the end of the list, we continued moving to that next main navigation item. We actually put together a short clip displaying how these functionalities work.
So let's take a look now what all these changes as a keyboard user look like. I've tabbed into your site and I can actually shift tab and see the skip to main content link. But right now I'm not going to use that. Let's say I want to interact with your menu. There's a small little caret icon that shows I can get into this menu. So I go ahead and hit enter, and now I can interact with this menu. Maybe I don't want to be here and I've decided I want to leave. I can do that a couple of different ways. One is to shift tab back out of the menu to the item I was last at. Or let's say I'm inside a menu and I don't want to shift tab all the way out. I can simply press the escape button and it's taken me back to where I was in the initial mega menu. The last feature is the ability to just tab through the menu. I'm partway through here and I decide, actually, I want to go to a different item within the main navigation. I can simply tab through and I'm taken to the next immediate element within your navigation menu. These improvements allow the keyboard user to choose where they want to go and how they want to interact with your menu.
So while we were making the improvements for keyboard users, we also updated the support for screen readers. When entering a submenu, the focus you saw in the video was set on the list of links. Now we set it on the entire menu box, allowing them to choose which pieces of content to interact with, providing them with access to the entire experience. In addition, we've added when submenus open, we set an ARIA expanded so that the screen reader knows a separate menu has opened. As mentioned before, Aten's partnered with the Blind Institute of Technology. BIT reviewed the final menu for us to approve our work through user testing. Kayla did a wonderful job at walking through exactly what changed with her overall experience. And now I'll play the recording so you can hear her thoughts on this decoupled mega menu.
Okay, with a few accessibility fixes applied to this web page, let's take a look at how the navigation menu looks now with those design changes applied. So I'm starting here at the top of the web page, and I'm just going to arrow down a little bit. Let's take a listen.
Visited same page link, skip the main content. Visited link at the visible home. Link graphic Facebook. Link graphic Twitter.
So we've got our socials here at the top. I'm just going to go past these.
Link heading level 2 search.
Got our search field.
Virtual PC. Go button.
And now we're ready to look at the navigation menu.
Link donate. Same page link collapsed menu, join the movement. Same page link collapsed menu, take action. Same page link collapsed menu, media.
So something we notice right away is that the navigation menu items are now just a single focus stop, meaning that I can just arrow down one time and move between these menu items. In the previous version of this design, we would start at the top and land on join the movement, and then I would press down arrow and land on that expandable menu. Press down arrow again, land on the text for the next menu item, down arrow again, land on the submenu. So with this design change applied, there aren't two stops for the screen reader. I can just press down arrow one time and move quickly between these menu items without having that extra text. Definitely makes the audio interface for me a little cleaner, a little easier and faster to navigate. So let's check out the other design change and see what happens when we expand one of these menus.
Same page link collapsed menu, take action.
Okay, I'm going to press enter.
Enter. Image by Melissa Bender. Crowd of people. We graphic.
So the menu expands. I get an announcement about the image here. So I do get an indication that something has probably changed state here. So let's use our arrow keys a little bit and take a listen.
Crowd of people wearing number indivisible shirts graphic. Indivisibles organized, which means building power and
Okay, we've got some information here. One of the issues with the previous design was when we expanded the menu, it would drop our focus down in the list and we would miss the top of this information. So I'm just going to arrow up.
Indivisibles or crowd of people with image by Melissa Bender. Link more ways to donate.
Yep, and it seems that now when I expand the menu, my focus is dropped right at the top of the new information. So I can start there and arrow down the page as I expect, and I won't be missing any information. So we're going to collapse this menu with the escape key.
Escape, take action, same page link collapsed menu.
And I get the audio information that that menu has collapsed. So you can see the version of this navigation menu before accessibility fixes were applied, and now how this menu looks and feels and sounds a little different with those fixes in place.
So if you saw, Kayla approved the functionality of this mega menu, and it seemed to work great for screen readers now too. Let's take a quick recap of what we did just to test our site. One of the things that we did that was super easy that anybody could take a chance at is using the wave tool. Then obviously we went through next with the keyboard, using that to make sure that if anything interacts with the keyboard, there's a good chance that I can interact with it using different accessibility tools. Reviewing the site visually to make sure that nothing seems off or stands out incorrectly. And most important, having an actual user test your site. So we've addressed all of the tools we utilized to figure out the issues and what those issues were in the recap of the solutions that we did to fix them. So missing alt text, we actually resolved that through requiring the alt tags, albeit that through the Drupal UI menu or through adding them to the code base. And keyboard users who couldn't access the menus at all, we crafted a custom JavaScript solution that allowed them to interact with the menus and the submenus, despite this menu being decoupled. And we updated this so that screen readers can understand and interact with your full experience of the menu instead of being directed to only parts of it. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we hope you're able to take this knowledge, review your own site, and make improvements from there. But if you ever need anything or want to discuss accessibility, we're here to help.